Okay, thank you so much for that introduction. Sorry for the delay because we had to wait until the people got out of bed, but now my computer went to sleep, so I have to wake up my computer instead. So, thank you very much, Thorsten, for having me, Fabian, or Fabula, and the lovely introduction. That was so nice. Are we here? Yeah, we're here. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to do two parts. One part will be the presentation, for which I'll thank you to come out of bed. And then the other part is I want to walk through real quick the work that we'll be presenting here, which is called Dct Siphoning. It's part of the MODA. The MODA is the Digital Museum of Digital Art. It's another museum than the museum Janine just referenced. The MODA will be installed in the hallway, and Milieu is also part of it. Milieu will talk later. But first I'm going to just explain a little bit about my practice. So I've known Thorsten for 10 years, and I come really from like demo scene, glitch, 8-bit, all that crap that y'all must like also, secretly. So we come from this, but I've never actually been in a game festival, which is funny. I mean, I work always on the sides of any genre, so it doesn't really matter. I'm also known as audiovisual artist. This is one of my favorite performances I did in my life, not because it went well, it's because it was the worst thing I ever experienced, but you know, that also teaches you a lot. This was in Russia in 2013, and it was the year in which LGBT laws were put into effect, and it was for a very official presentation. It was because the Dutch and the Russians had so many years of special transactions, and so they wanted to celebrate. We were invited, actually me and my band at the time, to do a performance, but then they got really scared of me specifically because I was going to do the visuals, and I'm like I'm a loud lady. So they started to ask me, what are you gonna do? You can't do this, you can't do that. There will be a lot of official delegate people, and you cannot do anything because you get into gulag or whatever, you know, like you'll be punished. So what happened is I perform with an analog video synthesizer. So I get the sounds in and it gets transformed to video. And when I performed and I got to set up, you know, you bring your rider, you get all the equipment, all the gear out. What happens is I was asking them, where is my screen? Like here, I'm looking at the wall. It wasn't like this kind of beautiful television. It was a black field of death. If you think about it, like if you're gonna project on a black field, obviously you will not see a lot. It was for back projection, but it wasn't set up to be a back projection. So I would have to do it on this like black thing. And then I was like, okay, I was trying to explain them that this won't work, but they were like, no, this is the best technology. It's the most expensive, we put the most money, this is it. So they really didn't understand how it would work. Now, I was just kind of like showing them. They sent this guy to clean the black screen, didn't really help. And then I started to show them anyway, but what happened is I realized there was something in between my analog video synthesis, which happens all live, and the setup and the black screen of death. It was the Russian video police. So besides the point that I had a black screen, I also had a guy that was monitoring my output, giving a delay of like 5 seconds or 6 seconds, which is the worst when you're doing, I mean, you know it from video game, you can't do anything anymore. So this whole thing fell apart. I kind of, yeah, whatever. But I learned so much, because this is when I shifted from glitch work, which I've been doing a lot when I was performing a lot in the 8-bit scene with Commodore stuff, and I've switched to doing my research mostly on resolutions. And so a resolution is not just the screen resolution, right? The width and the length, and that's also where it went wrong in Russia. They thought that it's all about, you know, the most amount of light on this kind of like canvas. They weren't thinking about everything that happens behind the screen. And so this is kind of like what I try to expand upon and try to explain. So a video resolution would be this quadrilateral image. These days, you have like a width, a height, you have stuck in this square thing. You never think about video also having 5 corners or 9 corners or 10 corners. And this is because resolutions are their settings to make stuff work fast with your processor, but it's also compromise. And so the options, like a screen that is outside of this 4-cornered environment, this is being compromised in a setting of different standards of resolution. So first of all, this took me to researching what is actually these standards that are being set. So this is the ISO. ISO is the International Organization for Standardization. They used to be based out of Hungary, but then the World War came and Swiss took over, of course. So they moved their headquarters to Geneva, and they changed from ISA to ISO. And I like this image. I've heard that there's quite a good female to male audience. I don't see it right now, but that doesn't matter. We're just like ISO, where there's all these guys setting all the standards. It's just like my little feminist, and then we can skip it. So here, I've been looking a lot about what is resolution setting. It's also like, how we're all stuck in our platforms. We can't siphon one flow of data to the next. You cannot listen to your rainbows. I'd like to translate stuff a little bit all the time. I'm making my students often deconstruct the images and the stuff they work with, just to explain to them how it actually works and what the politics behind these compressions or file standards or even softwares are. So this is just I call it the rheology of data. I like that because it sounds like urinal, but that's maybe just in my head. But it's like trying to push every flow of data from one platform to the next and showing how it also can work. For instance, in 3D, if you take a .obj object, you can also open it in a file editor, and you can look at the data, you can change the vertices by hand, and it makes you feel like these objects, they're much more fluid. Of course, this is not really what's done all the time, but this is how I made my character. This is a guy that lives in Hilitla, one of the first works I made in VR. It's released in 2013, I believe, 2015. Yeah. Now we're going to Germany, because we're in Germany. I should tell you a German story and not talk about the Russians only. In 2012, I started really to try to get out of this square thing that is the screen, but it's really hard. I made this work, it's called compress process. So I would put all these videos on top of these other objects and then play live. I tried to make PowerPoints and make the PowerPoints in weird environments that were not square, etc. What happened is I got a review from your beautiful Wired Germany. Everybody knows Wired, right? It's like a big magazine. And because I was starting, this was really to do live performances. I wanted to do live performances outside of just these square videos on top of each other, like how a VJ works. I wanted to put them in 3D space and work through it, maybe make a PowerPoint in 3D space and slide through weird slides, all psychedelic. But when I released it, this was one of the most important failures of my life, I think. Wired reviewed it, and they said, here comes my best German of the day, als Videospiel wäre Compress-Prozess ein Flop. Zu irritierend, geradezu verstörend ist die Erfahrung. Y'all can understand what that means, right? It means I suck. So, I wasn't planning to make a video game. This was supposed to be me making an environment for videos. But of course, if you put your videos inside another environment and you think it will take people away from how to approach this environment. I wanted to kind of deconstruct what is video, but I put it inside a 3D environment. People are starting to read it with the context of this other software. And so it just became immediately a video game, according to Wired at least. So this is Hilitla. I will not talk about this. This is an older work. Now, I'm gonna skip into the next part, which is maybe more important to the work that I'm gonna show you and that you can play in Demoda. In 2016, I was offered a really great job as researcher in the institute in Amsterdam. I got to write a book, and I would get a lot of money for writing a book, which is every researcher's dream. And when I started this, I'm doing a PhD actually on resolutions, but I changed from a beautiful German institute where the professors only like to listen to themselves to an English institute. So I didn't do it in proper way, and so I had not the... In England, you have to upgrade, so you have to do a second master thesis. Anyway, 2 days before I started my research with a desk, for the first time in my whole life, I would have a desk. I already put pens on my desk to, you know, like, feel like I'm coming somewhere. They called me, and they're like, I know you signed all the papers, but we're actually worried you didn't upgrade. And so I moved to this shit town called Amsterdam. It was like the hellhole for my life. And suddenly I was out of a job and I was just stuck there. So I became quite depressed for a year. I was just really sad until Transfer Gallery invited me to do a solo show in New York. And this became the Institutions for Resolution Disputes. And this is where this work comes from. The Institutions for Resolution Disputes is not one institution because, you know, if you get fired by an institution, you don't want to just get to the next institution. You'll make your own institutions. It's 5. And in the Institutions for Resolution Disputes, I basically take apart resolutions and I kind of like show how they work. In mathematical etymology of the use of the word resolution is actually something else than just a normal institution. It's not supposed to work just for the institution and the people inside the institution. It's actually to work well. With the IRD comes a patch. I have them here also if you're interested. So there was this like intrinsic kind of me being angry towards the institutions in general and specifically one. And I saw this open call for, how do you say, like, I wanted to win something. There was this like call. And I made a work for it. It was the open call for the crypto design challenge, which is already kind of like dubious. Who's gonna design cryptography? It's like, but anyway. So what I made is a language based on DCT. Now DCTs are discrete cosine transforms, not in the digital, but not in like video gaming, but generally in all the stuff that you'll see on your screen. There will be a lot of DCT compressions. DCTs are also the basis of the JPEG compression or a lot of video, H.264, etc. Compressions, MPEG-4 compressions. So what a DCT is, I'm gonna go really quickly into explaining the math. A DCT, you see it here. It's a block consisting of 64 macro blocks, right? So if you're putting an image together, made for instance a JPEG, you'll take one of these blocks that looks as similar as possible. You give it an amount of luminance and chrominance, so color and light, and then you stack a few blocks on top of it, and then it becomes like a photorealist kind of macro block of 8 by 8 pixels. So every JPEG you'll see actually consists just of this like visual alphabet of 64 macro blocks. That's kind of cool. When you're looking at JPEGs and you see a glitch, or when you're watching, I don't know, used to be these like television things where people would play video games also. I don't know if they still have that on television, but imagine you're watching this and your father is walking in front of the television receiver and suddenly you have all this crap on the screen. Those are the JPEG artifacts which we've been conditioned to not look at because we want to watch like what's really on the screen supposedly. And then I figured like this is where you can actually make the language. If we take these macro blocks, these things that are always there when there's a Verstoring, nice word, then we can use those actually as a language on top and like kind of like talk in this secret language. So what I did is I mapped all this institutional talk on top of just here. And you can map it on a JPEG and it looks like an error and people will not read it, but they will read it. So I sent this cryptography 5 institutions to the institute that fired me. And imagine what happened. I won a laptop, this little guy, which was like 1/10 of the amount that they were going to pay me for my contract. But hey, I won something. Like, I kind of beat them with my 5 institutions, but not really. But that's cool. So what I'm gonna show you is a work. It's called Dct Siphoning. It's based, or it's inspired by Flatland of James Abbott Abbott, 1884. It's a romance, because I think any good work is always about romance and love letters. So all my work is all love letters to people that never know that it's to them. So this is based on Flatland. Flatland is this like little guy that learns that there's multiple dimensions, has to jump out. So what I'm writing in my PhD is there's kind of like this ecology of compression complexities. That's 3 big words that kind of sum up my life, but it's really annoying to say that out loud to an audience that has to pick up those 3 words. But imagine that every complexity of compression is like, it starts with the pixels, so you have this like raster bitmaps, then you have the lines, imagine like GIFs for instance. From that you get into like blocks, DCTs, wavelets, vectors, and maybe zip compressions, but actually I'm not there yet, there is a chapter missing. So what this story does, it's about DCT Junior and DCT Senior. And DCT Junior just had his 64th interval, and now they're gonna kind of like siphon together through the different complexities. I'm gonna play it. There's a speed run of it too, if you ever want to watch it back. Somebody decided it was like nice to speed run through, so imagine if you make artworks and then people make speed runs, it's pretty funny. Totally co-opted by the game world. It's verstoorend and annoying, but whatever. So here we go, I have to mirror my displays, otherwise you won't see a thing. So this is part of the Demoda thing that will be installed. I was gonna put somebody in the front and make them suffer, but we couldn't get the Oculus to work, so I'm doing it non-VR, but it's VR. Ha ha ha. And it's all about Unity also. No, it's not true. Okay. And one more small thing, this is not supposed to be with my voice, but today my voice is speaking for the DCTs. Junior finally reached its 64th interval. It now has all its basic transforms aligned and is certified to compress. There is so much data waiting to resolve. I determined it adequate to run its first siphon together, so I can implement efficiency in Junior's parts. These records document our handshakes, and after running a checksum and debugging a few final blocks, we now can run our siphon. A siphon takes place through a tesseract. A sphere once told me that in my current configuration I'm not able to parse this fully because I can only render assets legible to me. I felt this as parses 1 in my stack, in my black stack. Our first siphon runs through an uncompressed raster graphic, which metadata tags as pixel art. For a moment my blocks feel nostalgic, but Junior acts indifferent to this. Obsolete architecture. There is no need for transcoding here. Our first siphon runs... Oh, there we go. Oof. You siphon into the abyss of lines. Or as a local download once wrote, the Disneyland for Euclids. Junior's blocks here seem very high frequency. Maybe it's because the sphere just told him to or proposed him a fork. We push for a next branch. At wavelet interval, I too reach a high frequency. For what reads as a short recursion, I mirror myself as junior and propose and process like I still run within a dedicated OS. Either this is madness or it's hell, junior glitches. In the middle of the kludges, a figure calmly sings with the DCT. This is neither. This is knowledge. Knowledge spans over multiple dimensions. In knowledge, data move upwards and not just northwards. But Junior just pulled out of vector space. From a buggy callback, I parse that I've overstacked Junior's first siphon. It implements Junior in a dimension to which it lacks protocol. It's beyond its resolution. Second parse, I realized that years of running a multiverse of transforms has made my calculations inefficient. Junior's missing plugin or lack of protocol keep it oblivious and cry glitch, but also let it siphon more efficiently, while certain dimensions stay unresolved. Its transforms run faster and cater to a folkloric connector, where I am running a bottleneck of uncalled outputs. So this work is dedicated to Nasir Ahmed and Lena Jpeg. These are two very historical figures to the Jpeg compression. Lena was the 1972 Playboy centerfold, which was the basis on which the people in Palo Alto would test their DCTs. DCT was written in 1972 by Nasir Ahmed, who is from Bangalore. However, when he published the algorithm, California took it over and used Lena as a model. And Lena is obviously a white lady, right? Because 1972, beautiful white lady centerfold. Imagine DCT being only tested forever since then on this one white lady. There's quite a lot of bias embedded. So there's actually a racial bias also in the JPEG algorithm that you'll see on a daily basis, which is part of this research that I'm doing. I also want to thank Will and Alfredo from Demoda. That's it. Thank you. I'm going to be here. You can ask me questions if you would really like to have a patch. I brought them. That's for the people. They can take the black on black patch. It's for the people in the know. It will have the key to the resolutions also on it.
Okay, thank you, Rosa. I think we have some minutes for questions. So if there is one or two questions, we can take them now. Anyone? Okay, here.
Hello. I was wondering why you decided to go for VR. What was the deciding moment to create a VR experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's weird to package stuff about compressions within this environment because it kind of like puts the one thing again inside another package of resolutions. VR, I think I've talked a lot about this, but I still don't have like the one answer. I have to say, I like VR because it breaks away the screen, or at least when I work with the headset on, it kind of is this new. For me, it was really new, and it was like all my dreams combined because finally I was outside of this like quadrilateral interface. However, there's a lot of discussion like when you make this work now and you're gonna show it. People just watch these stupid interfaces, like these stupid screens. I have like such a love-hate relationship to screens. So the talk right now, I'm gonna do another solo show from July onwards in New York, and it's all about how do you actually bring VR to the exhibition era, where there's a huge gap between what you experience solo in this headset versus the audience looking at you experiencing this. And this is a crazy, like there's so many things that I could say about that, but so I'm aware that VR is not one thing, and so just choosing this medium for putting this work is also quite a complex answer, which I'm still unraveling, and I'm trying to like now think about how you could put it like kind of like VR inside a cave, make it performative. This is an ongoing quest. Also like yeah, okay, right. So it's in there. The answer, I hope I'll find one little shard of, because there's not one answer to this question. It will be, the solo show will be like me for 3 months kind of diving into this, and people can come to the space and we're talking about screens mostly. So maybe come July, August, September to New York and ask me this question again when I hope that I've built this weird VR cave of psychedelia and I don't know what that's gonna look like. Thank you for your question.